answering the phone. Things were stalling. Things that they wanted to do couldn't happen. And so they started to reverse it or let the courts reverse it and try to fix things in the way. But getting rid of the civil service system will literally cause a lot of people to lose their jobs in the federal government, more than DOJ that you can imagine, and turn the White House into, every time somebody is elected, everybody gets thrown out and all new hiring begins all over. We have it here in Ohio too. So the one thing I do want to talk to you about what could happen that is important to us here is paying attention in the legislature to their legislation that mirrors this. And some of it's somewhat Machiavellian. There's a bipartisan bill right now that actually would make a felony out of hate crimes for police, for labor unions that are striking, or many people. But sexual orientation is not in it. The word sex is. And so some of our own Democrats are saying, well, sex is in there. But if you read Project 2025, that is exactly what they wanted to do, is take sexual orientation out of the law and just put sex in there so that hate crimes would not be judged the same way. Therefore, if a gay person, like myself, were hate crimed, if their local community had a law broken that was breaking an ordinance, it would be a misdemeanor, but at the state level, it might not be a felony. So they are very clever in how they're doing it, and they're doing it at the state level as well. And that is your opportunity to go down there because you're here, and they can shut down public hearings of Congress people. They can't shut down you from going to testify or view them face to face in the legislature when you try to do this. And that is one thing that we can definitely do.
So in terms of what, well, first of all, the real danger on the civil service end is right now, and we all probably know people who do this, the client or the customer of most people working for the federal government are the people. And civil service creates a system where, again, back to this book I've written, like you have people there who are trained and experienced and educated, and whether it's dealing with pandemics or, Department of Education, like their mindset is generally, we're helping the people of America, that's our job. And once you tear down all the barriers where everyone's a political appointee, once you have people like Donald Trump saying, we don't want anything coming out of the CDC that hasn't been politically approved, or no scientists in anything having to do with climate get to even publish a study until Stephen Miller or someone else signs off on it, which is what they're trying to do. This Schedule F and the elimination of civil service basically says that entire government goes from being about us to about serving President Trump's agenda. That's it. That is the big shift. And that's true with DOJ as well. I mean, they're very clear in Project 2025, and this is largely happening, that the old DOJ, as lawyers would know, was there to serve a broader, independent system of justice, sometimes maybe more slowly than some of us would have wanted. But there was an independence there, and that was to keep it from simply being the president's prosecutor. Project 2025 literally writes that should change, that the president in the end should be directing litigation decisions. And then we have the even worse thing that happened with the Supreme Court saying, and he also gets immunity. And all of a sudden now you have a DOJ, same example, serving the president's agenda and not the people's, or a broader concern for justice. And Bondi and Kash Patel are the perfect, the worst perfect people to do that. So I think the big switch, and again, going back to the opportunity, I think as time goes by and people figure out that this is what's happened, this is not for every voter, but if we can spell out what's happening with all these political appointees way deeper in the bureaucracy than they've ever been, and that then there is sort of a diminishment of services to everyday people because this is all serving the president's agenda, I think there are opportunities there. But basically, it's a massive shift in government from serving us to serving one person. In terms of what could come, so I think they clearly, there may be moments where Donald Trump doesn't do part of Project 2025 for a variety of reasons. One of the, if you went down a checklist, I didn't see it myself, but in preparation for this, TikTok was supposed to become ours, and I think thanks to some good contributions by somebody, Donald Trump does something different. So it's clear that he's corrupt too, by the way, and he could be bought off. So there may be moments where some billionaire buying his crypto meme stock will keep him from doing something that's in the plan. I think there's a lot in there. The labor section of Project 2025 is very damaging. I wrote a chapter on that. That is one that maybe there's some folks in his ear that have him not going as far there. Let's hope that's the case. But for the most part, I think that they are going to be trying to do it all. When you said what might happen, my biggest worry is what might happen is we allow this to get normalized, and we've decided it's all over. That's the biggest risk. I get asked all the time, and this is a dangerous question. Will we even have elections? Does that come up? Do not let that go unresponded to. Yes, we will have elections. They are following what is a model out of Hungary and other countries called the competitive autocracy. It has elections. They won. Look at Donald Trump every day. He says, I won by so much. I have a mandate. This is why I do these things. He told the troops at Fort Bragg this the other day, awfully. But the point is, their model actually does have elections. They just want to suppress enough votes and gerrymander enough, they feel like they're going to win them. But don't let ourselves talk ourselves into defeatism. That's why they're flooding the zone. That's why they're doing what they did today with Alex Padilla. They don't want us to protest. They don't want us to gear up for elections. So we need to know that if you look at Viktor Orban's model, he has elections. And knowing those elections are going to happen, we need to be doing what you're doing here, which is not let this settle in as normal, message well on it, run everywhere we can, and when those elections come, win everywhere in a way that pushes back. So my biggest fear is they want us to react in a way that we shut down. We're too overwhelmed. This week I feel a little overwhelmed. I think this is the most autocratic week we've seen. With the speech at Fort Bragg, the LA stuff, the threats of protesters today, this is maybe the most authoritarian week we've had. And you feel it, I feel it. But the risk is, the biggest risk is that we don't fight back. And the history of this country is very clear. There has always been a battle between those who want to suppress democracy and those who want to lift it. We're not new. This is not new at all. We're not the first generation that has to worry about the state of democracy. We thought we were. We were wrong. The outcome of this battle is determined largely by one force. Not those fighting against democracy. They've always been there. Motivated by the same reasons motivated now. It's determined by the strength of those who fight for democracy. If we fight hard, we've always won. If we quit, we might have Jim Crow where you lose for 60 years. So it's on us. And that's, to me, the biggest risk, is that we don't see that. And the biggest opportunity is that we do, and we take things back in 25 and 26 through elections.
Okay, my next question. Are these risks reversible? What have you guys done, and what is being put into place with Project 2025? Are they reversible, or are we in one?
So I'll put it this way. There is a lot of damage happening. There is a lot of damage. People losing jobs that have been studying how to keep people safe or how to help veterans, and many of them won't go back. These NIH cuts, if they settle in for a couple years, long-term damage. So in some ways, in any short-term sense, some of the direct damage is long-term. And that's sobering. I try and stay on the positive side, but when you think about that, all that damage, there is real damage. The broader question on democracy is, it is reversible. And going back to what I was just saying before, This is why I get up every day and get pretty fired up. And it just kind of happens automatically. We determine, all of us, and this is again the history, if this moment of darkness, and they always come, this is our history. We don't really, this is the history they like to censor, by the way. Right? They don't want us to know about how Reconstruction fell to Jim Crow. They don't want us to know how that happened. We determine how reversible it is and how bad the damage is. If we don't fight hard in the next 2 years, and this becomes normalized, and our kids think this is how it works, then which they will think if we don't change their minds, then this could be 30 or 40 years of this stuff. But if we fight back very quickly, the history tells us, we can reverse it in a midterm of an unpopular president in 2 years. So our fight determines the length and the depth of damage. And when, not to get too much into history, Northern Republicans quit on the South and blacks in the late 1800s. In a fight that had gone back and forth every 2 years and every 4-year elections, turned into 70 years of no democracy. That's not because the Southern racists were doing anymore. It's because the Northerners quit. And they decided to focus on other things. That was a decision that was 70 years of damage. That's our decision now. Do we want to be living with this until, most of us in this room are no longer here, and my kids are 40? Or do we want to turn around fast? So our effort in the next couple years is going to determine not just is it reversible, but how quickly we reverse it. And my hope is, one other thing, the level of corruption right now is astounding. And we are seeing that our system is not built to deal with it. I did a thing the other day, the top 10 ways that Trump is corrupt. It's unbelievable when you listen that way. Yeah, that was hard. I cheated. I said, well, selling pardons was number 11. I added more than 10 because there's so many. But I think the other thing we have to commit ourselves to is, let's reverse it, and then we need massive levels of reform. From reversing Citizens United, to cracking down on corruption, to other major reforms that we've been kind of holding back on because we thought everything was okay. Now we know it's not okay. So it's not good enough to just go win, which I think we can do. But once we do, you mentioned, actually it's a different call, get the damn Voting Rights Act reauthorized, quick, if we have a chance. We were too passive on that when we had control between 21 and 22. Massive opportunity blown. So we have to win, and then we've got to make sure that some of the things that are happening that we assumed could never happen, now we know they can. We put into place laws, maybe even constitutional amendments, to fix them so they can't happen in the future.
I have 6 minutes. All right, I can't see your cards. That's why. All right.
I didn't know there was one.
Yeah. So I want to talk about it from a little bit of a different angle because he hit on many of the points I was going to talk about. But there is one area that is really concerning to me, and that is any entity that can think with critical thinking skills, whether it's the legitimate media or colleges and universities, they are trying to undermine. Now, why are they trying to do that? Okay? We have become a society of looking in the mirror. Okay? Actually, I got a lot of you on my Facebook page, right? Just over the years because of the protests and things we've done. I don't see necessarily what the Republicans do. Actually, I do, because I went and protested the Buckeye Institute, and they've never taken me off their frickin' list. But part of the reason we're so polarized is we only see what we see. And the advent of digital technology and digital advertising right now makes it even worse, because it finds algorithms and it finds you, and so you're only going to see that information. So where else can you get that legitimate news? Sometimes we don't even like that legitimate news too, but in a free press or in our universities and our colleges. So things like SB 1 and repealing it are important. Things like supporting public broadcasting or supporting legitimate news are important. Being able to address people that you don't agree with from logic are important. Attacking them by attacking Donald Trump doesn't work. Attacking them on the actual facts that you present to them works. And I'm not just talking like your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving. You're never going to change that crazy uncle's opinion, right? But many people are actually able to discern right from wrong. You know? And it's part of our job too, to talk to people. We avoid politics right now. They want us to avoid politics. They don't want us to talk to other people. It's complicated. It's a conflict. And they don't like conflict. People don't like conflict. But if we don't talk to them in a way where we express to them, this is not right. It is not right. You know? That senator did not do anything but try to talk. He did not incite them like the Speaker of the House said today when they put handcuffs on. We have to be able to talk to each other even when it's uncomfortable. And I tell that to people all the time. And I'll tell you something, I find when I do that, if I don't do it in an accusatory way, that I can have a reasonable conversation. Now yes, you're going to have certain people that are never going to believe you. That 33% that are mocking or whatever. But we have got to open our tent too and start talking to those other folks. We can't just try to go after the blue collar person we lost. We can't just have, one of our problems is even our infrastructure. We have a new party chair and I'm hoping that improves, but our infrastructure, we come up with a model, somebody in Washington decides what the model for that election is. We're only talking to women. Women are the most important thing because of what happened in Ohio on choice. And we don't talk to any men. Well, why would we think men would change their mind? Right? If you don't talk to African American men, you're not going to get them to move. If you only talk to the traditional leaders in churches, African Americans and most Ohioans live in suburbs. They live all over the place. They don't necessarily go to that church. We have to talk to more people and open our.
I've actually started our last section before we open it up to dialogue and questions. Because you're talking about what we can do. I guess one of my questions for the two of you is you've talked about making an effort to have PBS, NPR, and all of those preserved. What are credible sources to go to for information about what is happening? We are very aware that propaganda is infiltrating us, and in your opinions, where should we go for credible sources?
Well, I mean, I do think I think Ohio actually is blessed that we still do have major league newspapers covering things in a pretty fair way. I know we all can rag on the Cincinnati Enquirer, the Columbus Dispatch, but you know, in other states, they literally have like one reporter covering the entire state house for a state. So to the extent you think these papers are doing good things, continuing, you know, this is all about the business of journalism and continuing to subscribe and be part of what they're doing. You know, we do have good reporting of the State House. One of the problems around other states is they don't. Keep doing that. I do think there's a lot more independent media. You know, I have a Substack page. I think there's a way now to people to self-select, and this will be a challenge for journalists, by the way, but people can self-select voices that they view as credible. There's a risk that can lead to division, but I think everyone figuring out who they trust, who's giving them the straight facts, and keeping up on those is really important. What I also want to say, so that's just sort of what I think everyone here should think about. But back to messaging, I was at a presentation last week in New York at a conference on democracy that was so sobering, and this is something that's being talked about, that the Democratic side of the aisle has been very slow on any kind of new media. Investing in it, politicians engaging in it. And this study, if you look it up, Media Matters did this study a couple months ago, you might have seen it. They looked at all the biggest, audience, podcasters, YouTubers, other social media followings that were at least 1 million or more. And they investigated which of them had more sort of left and progressive messages and which had right messages, right wing. 82% was right wing. They called it Republican narrative dominance, meaning people worry about our message. It wasn't even in the space. And the younger you go, the more that's all they're seeing. And so one of the biggest shifts that should scare us all in the last couple of years, it was young people that moved the most to the right in the last 4 years, and they're the ones least likely to look at the broader typical media, and they're the ones most likely to be watching Joe Rogan or any number of other people that I've never even heard of because I'm not in that world as much as I need to be either. 82%. What was interesting was about this, and so bigger picture way beyond us, we've all got to be thinking about how to move that space. Our candidates do, but the other interesting thing that with our parties do, Ken Martin or our new chair here or others, need to all be thinking about that. But one of the really interesting points that this person made was, and again, Media Matters, if you Google it, you'll see the study. Many of these quote-unquote conservative voices in these podcasts did not start out as political shows at all. Or they'd even started out as sort of center left. Joe Rogan said the other day, and I don't listen to him, he said, I used to sound more like a Democrat. And who's the woman, African-American woman, Candace Owens, who said that? She started out as a Democrat leading the Democratic Party. And what happened was, right-wing investors said, they have huge audiences and we're going to invest in them. And so they invested in shows that actually weren't that political, and they made them political. That's how long they've been doing this. And then the politicians go on their shows and everything else. So this has been a very thoughtful strategy. It's blowing the doors out of messaging in ways that we're not in, and every level of the Democratic side needs to figure it out, and we need to start creating that. And one of the little secrets is these were shows, many of them, they started and they became popular not being about politics. And then there was sort of movement by right-wing forces to make them more political. But the audiences came because they were talking about other things too. And they still do talk about other things. So we've just got to get a lot smarter, bigger picture than where we are today about how we compete in that space. And that needs to be done in 20. This is not like a long-term plan. This needs to be done very quickly as we're running very hard to try and win in 26.
Yeah, I mean, the cookie cutter approach to politics has to end. Every 2 years, there's new technologies. The AI technology that is just beginning is going to take hold, okay? Our young people, you're absolutely right, we lost young people because they weren't seeing our message. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you start going after some young people, if you work in digital, which I think both of us have done, you see that the message starts to spread over algorithms. And it finds other people that are similar to people that are not, okay? So they were looking outside the box, and they were moving outside the box. And they had folks like Elon Musk who understand that, or have people that understand that because he bought X, right? I liken it to, we were campaigning in an old style, so it's kind of like when the redcoats, I told a couple people in the audience, it's like when the redcoats were going down during the Revolutionary War, they fought with honor. You ever hear of Next Man Up? It was, 4, 4, 4, 4, it was rows of 16, they're marching down, and the colonists suddenly get behind the rock and start shooting, and they're like, that's dishonorable. Well, we won the war. So we do have to be more nimble. We have to have more involvement from people at the local level. We have to have tools for people, and we have to be less controlling in order to do that. But we also have to approach people from a standpoint of, we aren't lecturing. The argument about the Democratic Party is that we're elitists and we tell everybody how they're supposed to think. And part of that comes from, we hate Donald Trump so much that you start your conversation by saying, I hate Donald Trump. As opposed to, did you see what happened to that U.S. Senator? I don't think that's right for a Republican or a Democrat, and here's why. and maybe they agree with you and you get them on that, right? And then we gotta march our own march. I mean, even some of us as older folks, I get all of my digital clients, whether they're business or political, I get the what they're watching and where the ads are being seen, and people are responding. Fox News is huge among Democrats. I think we watch it because we love to hate them. I don't know. But part of that is we have to use the different technologies. We have to start reaching out to other people. That doesn't mean you throw out all the old politicians and some of the fights going on at the DNC right now. I don't have a dog in that hunt. What it means is we got to know what's next. I'll tell you about a technology I'm hearing about now that's new. There's a new technology out that I'm going to experiment with that they can determine what negative ads are seen where on the internet and in digital, so that you don't have to respond by sending an ad and informing people about the negative ad that haven't even seen it. Instead, you can just respond to the people that actually saw it. That's a game changer in terms of how it's implemented. If we can figure out how it works, and if we can go outside the bubble and actually utilize it properly. But I hate to say this, maybe I can say it easier than you because you were a party chair. You know, Eisenhower once warned about the military-industrial complex. We have a political industrial complex in Washington where we don't move fast enough because we're using the same systems and the same people, and our data gets outdated. And maybe what worked 2 years ago or 4 years ago isn't what the other side is doing. We become the redcoats. And that's what we've got to reverse.
I retired a long time ago, so I don't mind agreeing with everything you just said.
I think what we'll do, if everybody is in agreement, is to open it up for questions. Since you're first up here, and then I'll get you next, okay?
Number one, I admire your collective optimism. It's marvelous. Now, there are two things I want to tell you about. What 25 is doing to the economy is basically destroying the infrastructure. Now, you know, if you have the course, thermodynamics teaches you, once you snatch something up, it takes forever to rebuild. So we will live rather badly, maybe like 50 years ago. The third thing is you've got a timeline, and the timeline is climate warming. And this government doesn't believe in it. So we have, 10 years? Lots of luck. After that, there won't be any people left. And so all these discussions will disappear. Well, thanks for coming.
I will tell you this about the economy. One of the things that Washington goes back that is concerning to me personally is that the crypto economy that's building up is built on nothing. You know, basically it's you're a celebrity, you get money, and or in the case of Trump, you get money from the Arabs and then you go over and that's a danger in the economy. That could lead to a huge recession. And I do worry.
John Perry, I first began an affiliation with this organization when it was UA for Kerry in 2004. I was precinct captain. We raised the DPI in my precinct by about 9%. Do you see the Democratic Party ever embracing a fundamental modernization of democracy to allow for the participation in a positive way of more than two parties? Look at our history. You know, we would have had President Al Gore in 2000 had he been able to make a coalition with Ralph Nader, the Green Party. You know, the fact that, and I don't doubt that there were people who had no interest in the Green Party, who supported that party because they knew it could cost Al Gore the presidency. Do you ever see the Democrats embracing parliamentary democracy?
Well, I don't know about parliamentary democracy, but I do have something sobering to say, which a lot of folks, even when I was at Progress, Ohio, didn't like to hear, which is the litmus tests have to go, guys. If you want a majority and you want to win, you can't agree on 100% of all issues, okay? And sometimes, I'll use this example from Progress, Ohio, which David will remember. Sometimes, if you're strategic, like in my case that I had against Jobs Ohio, which went nowhere because they decided I had no standing. That's going to be in my grave, by the way. He had no standing, but he was right. But sometimes you can go, and I got the Tea Party to represent me because they agreed on that issue. And at the same time, John Kasich was fighting with them, and they didn't want him to expand Medicaid, so he expanded Medicaid because he had a fight with them. So I got a twofer. And I got a lot of nasty email from people saying, how could you work with the Tea Party? Well, guys, the litmus tests have to go if we want to.
Let me address first our optimist question, our 10 years ticking. I do think, again, I'm sobered about what's happening, but I see opportunities. And what they are doing in the economy is a massive political opportunity. And this is my attitude. I wouldn't talk about a senator being arrested. I would talk about Medicaid cuts. I would talk about foods. You'll like this, and I think everyone here would have done the same thing. 2 nights ago, my wife said, hey, John Huston's calling me up. Well, we were being called to listen to his town hall meeting. So I said, well, let's listen. And for 50 minutes, I listened to his call, okay? And now we know from polling yesterday how underwater this bill is. Every question, and my guess is this was generally, or at least a Republican-leaning audience, was, I'm really concerned about Medicaid cuts. I've been fighting cancer for years. Will I be cut off? What's going to happen with Social Security? One woman called and said, my food support was cut off a few months ago, and I was told it was because of illegals. Okay? And here's John Huston cutting all these things, having to lie his way through. At one point, we all know that if the deficit numbers are accurate, Medicare will be cut because of automatic pay-go cuts. He had to lie about that. He literally said, he went along with the narrative that you all know that food support cannot go to undocumented immigrants. That's not legal. That's not why this woman is losing her food support. She will lose it if John Huston votes for this bill, because it's going to cut $300 billion. So I think if you listen to his phone call, this is why he won't do a town hall meeting in person. Every issue on his call was about the economy. And it's getting worse, and it will continue to get worse. And so I think in 26, our best messaging will be around when they vote for this, and the deficit goes up, and all these things are cut. Oh, and by the way, one other big one. And they destroy public education in public schools in rural Ohio thanks to vouchers. Those are the issues that I think do give us an opportunity. On your question about coalition building, I think our best lesson came in how we won in August and November of 2023. It was about the issue. And you had the Libertarian Party endorsing the no vote. You had Maureen O'Connor out there. You had Betty Montgomery out there. The pro-democracy coalition of states like Ohio is close to a supermajority. And those votes in August, in a non-Trump year, let's say, okay? When Trump's on the ballot, turnout spikes in red areas, it gets harder. But there is a majority that is pro-democracy. It showed up in those elections. because we kind of didn't see, who here was celebrating when Betty Montgomery was debating Frank LaRose on August? I was, it was awesome. She was amazing at debating him, and Maureen O'Connor. So uniting around some of these democracy issues, uniting around some of these economic issues, is, I think, long-term how we'll win.
Okay, and I believe you have a microphone, so.
Thank you.
Is it?
So,
Is it on?
can you hear me good?
Yes.
It's okay. So I recognize that the Democrats need to catch up on how we're getting in social media and do it, and that can't happen overnight. We clearly need to do that. Putting that aside, a question that's burned me up since day one, the inauguration day, the Democrats in Congress, and by that I'm just gonna say Schumer and Jeffries, we are not seeing any leadership from them. And I would love to hear your thoughts on a theory as to why. And the view I have in my mind is, remember COVID. COVID was an absolute national emergency, right? And we had leaders who were doing press conferences, town halls every day or every week or at least every month. Even our own Governor DeWine, who we like to hate for other reasons, at least he was getting in front, hitting a crisis, talking to the public. Why do we not have Schumer and Jeffries and bring Buttigieg too? Because he can talk better than all of them. Okay? Why, let me finish the question, sir. Why do we not have them on at least a weekly or monthly, like, Crisis for America call? And I'm not talking about having them address the issues that only those of us who are further left care about. I'm talking about the bread and butter issues, like you guys are going to lose your Medicaid, you're going to lose your Social Security, you're going to lose public education. Why do we not have these guys out there? Are they playing dead like James Carville suggested maybe they should be? Or are they just not competent? Or are they actually saying something where we're just not hearing them because they're not saying it through in a confident way? What is your theory on that? Sorry to cut off your answer. but that's my question. Thank you.
I think COVID is a good example, and I know it because I happened to be at the UAW and we shut down the first plants that shut down everything else. And I can tell you Democrats and Republicans were calling us trying to keep it open. And I remember at the time Rory Gamble was the president of the union at that time, a guy that really saved the UAW. And he wasn't worried about it because he said, leadership never comes from this building or from Washington.
That's right.
It comes from the members. It comes from the people. And sure enough, when people sat down in plants and said, we're not working, he was able to go on a phone call with all three big three companies and tell Henry Ford, would you send your daughter into that plant without a vaccine? And there was silence, and Henry Ford said, no. And they all shut down plants. We had to figure out how to reopen them, but they all shut down the plants. And Washington shut down, and everything started to move. You are where that starts. We cannot wait for leaders to do that. It is happening right now in the streets from people that aren't in this room even. Some of you are there. But people are responding. I've seen more people, listen, I did a lot of shouting at buildings in Progress, Ohio. I've seen more people out in the streets in different cities and places that I can tell, they're not organized into doing this. They're upset. And Washington will hear when we speak.
What's the percentage? Is it 3 to 5% of our population?
That's just, yeah, the study is true. Who's going to protest on Saturday? My guess is almost everybody. So that's great. To your question, and again, I'm a long retired chair, so I just say whatever I think. I don't really want Chuck Schumer being the face of it. We may have seniority that leads you to being important, but seniority in the age of Joe Rogan and Candace Owens does not mean you're the best person to be speaking about it.
So why can't we find somebody to be
Well,
that face?
yeah, that's what needs to happen. I completely, the first week after Trump's inauguration was a disaster. It's like I wrote a whole book about the damn thing. It's like they didn't even know it was coming. So they were flat-footed for a week and a half. Then to your point, one guy showed up. Andy Kim showed up at USAID, and he began the process of showing what it looks like. Then you all started having in others town hall meetings, which gave them some backbone. But I completely agree. Now, one thing you should know is, to your question, Schumer, I think, somewhat agrees with what I'm saying, because he assigned Cory Booker to go out and do it. That's the kind of thinking they should be doing. They should be more aggressive, and they should be thinking through, not, again, who's the most senior, because I see half these people, and they're like counter-messaging. It's like hurting us when they're talking about it. They need to find whether it's Buttigieg or Raskin or who's the great Crockett. They need to find the best communicators and say, here's the schedule of you getting out there and you kicking butt on it. And by the way, like I described with the whole influence, what do they call it? Not influencers, but yeah, influencers. Go find them, because the reason Joe Rogan got so big, and I mentioned Candace Owens, is because they weren't in politics at all. And Ken Martin, by the way, the ENC is doing some of this. I've seen it. Find the non-political people who agree with us and get them out there as well, because their audience is bigger than even Pete Buttigieg doing a show. So I agree with you. I think they started out very badly. I think they're trying to catch up. But yes, it needs to be far, far better. And the egos of seniority in this day and age just need to go by the wayside. Maybe they should stay in power, maybe not, but they shouldn't be necessarily the people speaking about it almost ever.
Thank you.
We have a person, wait, we have this side.
Hi, gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. My question is, can you address the whole issue of Christian nationalism that is woven into Project 2025? They are amazingly and scarily organized, and they are, it is very much a command and control organization, and I was wondering if you could address all that.
So the best way to answer that is to address it by issues. And the best way to do that is for us to be very clear about it. I happen to be Jewish, but I don't believe God, in any religion, thinks it's okay to take food stamps away. To tell somebody that is disabled or has brain damage, you no longer get assistance unless you find a job in a difficult economy on top of that. You know, these are the dichotomies. What is it that you think you're doing with your priorities? I don't think, I mean, I can't speak for it, but I don't think the Christian viewpoint is to pass money up to the 1%. I don't think most religious leaders are happy about this. I know our Pope, our new Pope from Chicago, I know he's not. The president himself today, and this is a way to have a conversation about immigration, the president